courtesy of Jay Swavey.
From fans, for the fans.
The best place for league updates.
The hottest takes on the internet. Welcome to Cal's Call.
Hello and welcome back to Cal's Call. I'm your host, Joseph Callamore, and thank you so much for tuning in. Well, guys, it's almost here. Tomorrow, the very anticipated day. It only happens once a year, 2K Day. Yes, that's right. NBA 2K20 is releasing tomorrow. We have positional rankings for the top players of each year that come out the day before. So today we're going to go over what those rankings are. I'll give my takes as to what I think of each. Let's get into it. First, we're going to go point guard. Steph Curry, 95 overall. For those of you that play, that's a good rating. I agree with it. He's the best point guard in the game still. And he's considered that by quite a wide margin, seeing as the number 2 point guard, Damian Lillard, is a 92 overall. Now, this may stir up some controversy. Kyrie Irving is 3rd at 91. Russell Westbrook is 4th at 90. Kemba Walker is 5th at 88. Damian Lillard, for people who don't know, is absolutely the second best point guard in the NBA. He's right there behind Steph Curry. Now, 2K has him 3 whole ratings behind him. That's quite a big drop off, but it's realistic. Steph Curry is probably a top 5 point guard of all time. Damian Lillard's not in that conversation. He's definitely top 20, but he's not top 5. He's not Curry. So that's a good rating for me. Kyrie Irving coming in at 3. Personally, with as bad of a year as he just had, well, at least to his standards, I think that he could have been warranted as a 90 overall, same as Russell Westbrook, who's right there at a low 90, at 90 actually flat. Some people may disagree with that. Of course, he does get better stats than most players, but in my opinion, and anybody who scouts the game, you can see that for the most part, most of his stats are inflated just due to the fact that he goes for rebounds, he plays during garbage time when it's against the backups. There are multiple reasons as to why Russell Westbrook's stats pop off the page, but it's not necessarily a winning player. I think that's what 2K took into account, and that's why he's only at 90 overall. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting because, most of the time you see a lot of, 90s in the guards for 2K. 2K is such big on perimeter play. It's so big on perimeter play. You would think that they'd try to rate their guards a little higher. Yet at number 5, Kemba Walker, he doesn't even pass the 90 threshold. He's at an 88. I personally disagree. As a Charlotte Hornets fan, I've seen the guy play for the last few years. He's a great all-around player. He's a great team contributor. I personally have been pushing for him to be in the 90s on 2K for a while now. I think once he's getting the exposure of a bigger market such as Boston, that we'll see him possibly get a bump in a rating. I think 88's a little low for him. Number 6, Ben Simmons, 87 overall. I don't know how they continue to justify giving somebody with no jump shot whatsoever such a high rating, but I understand it's because of his athletic gifts that they give his rating shot up via speed, handles, so on and so forth, but his shooting aspect, the non-shooting aspect, is ridiculously low. It should really inhibit his being over an 85. I personally think that's a good rating for him. 87 is a little high for me. We see D'Angelo Russell at 87, same as Ben Simmons. That's unfair to me. D'Angelo Russell just had an all-star season. He's an all-star combo guard. This guy's a scorer if there ever was one. Not the greatest defender, but neither is Ben Simmons. And he's an 87 overall. Mike Conley, the veteran here, 87. Now here's where it gets a little interesting. De'Aaron Fox of Sacramento is an 86 overall, the same as John Wall. Both of these guys are from Kentucky under John Calipari. They're both big names. De'Aaron Fox, though, quite young still. I'm a big fan of his game. I don't know if it warrants an 86 overall, especially with that speed. I think a lot of people are going to abuse that system with that high of a rating. But, with the season he just had, I think they're banking it more off the potential of him to have another great season, because I don't think his last season warrants an 86. Others might differ in their opinion, but personally, I think he should be more around an 84. And then John Wall being an 86, obviously he's hurt, still coming back from the Achilles injury. He'll be out for quite a while still, but when he does return to form, that makes a lot of sense. A mid-80s grade is perfect for him. He's probably not a 90s player ever again, but he's definitely going to be a mid to high 80s, even at his peak now. Moving on to the shooting guard position, number 1, they have James Harden. Now, some people could differentiate in their opinions here. Harden is rated higher than Steph Curry. He's at a 96 overall compared to Curry's 95. I would be the one who disagrees with that. I personally think that Curry should have a higher rating because he's just a better basketball player overall. But at the same time, James Harden is one of the best offensive players to ever touch a basketball, at least statistically. So you do have to warrant that rating via his offensive production. Klay Thompson, number 2. Now, here's one of the biggest drop-offs in positional rankings. You go from James Harden, who's a 96, to Klay Thompson in 89. That's a 7-point drop. That's quite big, quite large. Now, it does show the state the NBA is in terms of elite talent at the 2 position. I mean, back in the 2000s, you were looking at Kobe's, Dwayne Wade's, Tracy McGrady's. That's just not the case anymore. We don't have these elite superstar brand names at the 2-guard position. We have James Harden, we have the beard, and that's it. Klay Thompson's the second closest to that in being a splash brother, and it's the only one you can really identify with. Now, 3rd overall, I love this rating. Donovan Mitchell at an 88 is perfect. A lot of people are going to think that's too high for him. He's rated the same as Jimmy Butler, who comes in at 94 as an 88 overall as well, which I think is fair. Donovan Mitchell, he can be a great defender. He's athletic. He has limitless potential. A lot of people think it's disrespectful to compare him to Dwayne Wade. I don't. I get it. It's only his 3rd year. But if you look at both of them, I know Dwayne Wade had Shaq and a much deeper playoff roster around him when he was this young. But Donovan Mitchell has a really talented team this year. I think that the Jazz are a dark horse to make it to the Western Conference Finals. If they make it there, you never know. We could see him being finals bound, which may sound very off-putting to a lot of people, but it's definitely possible with the defensive capabilities of Rudy Gobert-led defense in Utah. So I think that's a perfect rating for Donovan Mitchell. Like I said before, Jimmy Butler comes in at 88 overall in Miami. I think that's a good rating for him. Definitely not a 90s player in my personal opinion, but a high 80s makes a lot of sense. Bradley Beal at 87. Personally, I think it's low. If you watch Bradley Beal play last year, this guy's a beast. His game has continued to evolve. At first, he was just a spot-up shooter. He added a much better offensive game to himself. He can not only spot up, but he can take it to the rack. I mean, this guy has a great handle on the ball for a 2-guard. He's more so, in my opinion, a combo guard because I think he can play the point in some aspects. He's a good distributor. Not an elite defender, but definitely a good one. Very athletic, so I think he could have been warranted as an 88 or an 89, especially seeing the season that he just had. CJ McCollum at an 87. Again, they kind of linked Bradley Beal, CJ McCollum, and DeMar DeRozan together at 87s overall for all 3. Why? Because they're all 3 offensively minded guards. They don't play the greatest of defense. They're all stars, but they're not superstars. So they want to give them a mid-80s rating. That's fine. I just think that at least Bradley Beal could have been bumped up 1. CJ McCollum's an elite scorer, but his defense leaves a lot to be desired. He's undersized. He's not the greatest athlete, so an 87 makes a lot of sense. DeMar DeRozan, typically a guy you see in the 88 or 89 range, dropped off a point or 2. Why? Mainly because his athletic gifts are starting to fade. He's in his 30s now. Those athletic gifts that he's relied on most of his career are now beginning to dry up. So that makes a lot of sense here. Now, here's one that I think is a very interesting rating, and I think we could end up seeing going up. Luka Doncic is 87 overall for the Dallas Mavericks, reigning Rookie of the Year. That's a great rating, although he's lower than Donovan Mitchell. I think they should have been rated roughly around the same at an 88. But Luka Doncic has the potential to end up in the 90s. Some people may think that's crazy. I'm not one of them. I love Luka's game. He's built for the modern NBA. This guy's a 6'8" point guard that you can use to lead the offense. That Mavericks team with him and Porzingis is going to be scary. They're going to put up a lot of points, and I think that's going to end up with Luka Doncic in the 90s by the time the season ends. Victor Oladipo at 87. I believe he was 88 last year. I may be wrong. He may have been at 87. So they're keeping him roughly around the same place. Before he got hurt, this guy was an upper-level all-star. He could warrant an 89 or even a 90 rating. So if he does come back to form with time after the return of his injury, we could end up seeing his rating move up. At 87 makes a lot of sense. And some people may think he should be higher, but Devin Booker is at number 10 of the shooting guards at 86 overall. This guy's completely offensive-minded, doesn't play a lick of defense if you watch him play, mainly because he knows even if he does try on the defensive end, that team isn't winning in Phoenix. That could change this year. They have some veterans. They have much better talent, and mainly they just have time to grow and gel together. I think that's going to be big for that team. Excuse me. They have new coach Monty Williams, who I think is going to do great things in Phoenix. He did a great job in New Orleans. Unfortunately, they just didn't have the talent to get him over the hump, and they were in a loaded Western Conference back then with the Grizzlies, the Spurs, the Warriors just taking into form. So there was really never a chance to compete, but I think that Monty Williams is going to do a great job with that Suns roster. Devin Booker may end up shooting up, especially being an offensive-minded player. The one constant you'll see in these top 10 rankings is that almost all of them are offensive minded. If you're defensive minded, 2K does not like you. I repeat, 2K does not like you. It's just a fact of life. They only want the offense. Moving on to small forward, we have both LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard at 97 overalls. Personally, I love that. I think Kawhi Leonard is just as good as LeBron James at this point of their careers. Kawhi Leonard, as you saw, took over in last year's playoffs, won the Toronto Raptors their first NBA championship, then signs to the Los Angeles Clippers to create an in-state rivalry of the Los Angeles Lakers versus the Los Angeles Clippers. They tried to make it a rivalry back when Blake Griffin and Chris Paul were there. It wasn't. The Lakers were a lot worse. Now it's more evenly matched. We have two superstars on both sides in Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and then LeBron James and Anthony Davis. We'll get more into Paul George and Anthony Davis later, but Kawhi Leonard and LeBron James both being 97s are, I think, absolutely amazing for the game of 2K. I'm tired of seeing LeBron so much higher above everybody else, and Kawhi Leonard's just as good. So that's great. Giannis Antetokounmpo coming in at a 96 overall. Don't you love how I pronounce that? I love saying his name, Antetokounmpo. Just practice and practice and practice. I hear so many people get it wrong. It's amazing. But Giannis Antetokounmpo is a 96 overall. Makes a lot of sense. This guy could potentially move up. Giannis is that one player. He's like a cheat code in any game, either in real life or in the actual game of 2K. The guy doesn't make sense. He's 6'10", but a point guard. He's more athletic than 98% of the league. The guy's just a freak of nature. He's going to continue to crush it, and I believe if nothing else, he's going to move above a 96, not below. Kevin Durant's a 96 overall. Perfect rating for him. When he plays, he's an elite offense. He's one of the best players to ever pick up a basketball. Definitely a top 3 small forward of all time next to Larry Bird and LeBron James. So this guy's definitely warranted to be a 96. He's just hurt. So when he comes back, a 96 is very warranted. Paul George, a 93 overall. I think that's fair. I don't think he should be any higher. I think that maybe he could have been a 92, but he just had an MVP type caliber season. The issue with Paul George, and one of the reasons why 2K is never going to make him a 95, is because like you see in the playoffs, he doesn't show up. Sometimes he has a really, every player has a rough stretch throughout the season, at least at some point. Not everybody's LeBron James or Michael Jordan, but when this guy gets cold, he gets cold. He can't hit the ocean. He just can't find the bottom of the hoop. So, Paul George is warranted at a 93. He's a superstar in his own right, but man, can he be streaky at times. Jason Tatum's an 85 overall. Talking about drop off from 5 to 6 at the small forward position, you see a drop of 8 points. That seems to be the theme this year in 2K. And you know what? I support it. I'm behind it. I'm so tired of seeing these players overrated, being so overrated on 2K's roster servers, with them being these high rated players when they really don't do anything in real life to warrant that rating. And then people just abusing the system, and it's not realistic at all. These kids are learning that players who are amazing in the game aren't really that great in reality when they go and watch the product at a live game. And it sucks, because if you're a kid and you're expecting this god of a player and you're so disappointed, it's because 2K rated them so unfairly. But it's fun to see that. So Jason Tatum was a little overrated last year. I think he was higher rated. I think at some point he was an 86 or an 87 last year, but he's an 85 going into this year. Makes a lot of sense. Had a lot of hype behind him going into his sophomore year. Didn't live up to that, but he's still a good overall young prospect. He has the potential to go up to the high 80s. Probably not a 90s type player unless he has an amazing all-star caliber season. Next, a little bit of a surprise here. I didn't think they were going to rate him this high. Bogdan Bogdanovich. I wonder how many people know him. Well, if you don't, you should. Bogdan Bogdanovich, an 83 overall, went to the Utah Jazz. This guy's going to be a monster. I think playing next to Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley, and Rudy Gobert is going to do wonders for this guy's career. He's a great three-point marksman, great defensive player, 6'8", has great size at the 3 position, very versatile. Definitely try to use him if you can. If you've never heard of him, use him in 2K. Learn what he's like as a player, and then maybe watch him on live TV. Next, we got Danilo Gallinari at 83 overall for the Oklahoma City Thunder here in Oklahoma. The guy, when he plays, that's the issue. When he plays, The guy's very injury prone. Lost a little bit of a first step when it comes to his speed and quickness, but he's still a great overall offensive talent, can stretch the defenses from deep, very versatile, can play the 3, 4, and some small ball 5 in some scenarios. I know that the Clippers threw him out in those sets at some points last year. So the 83 overall is very warranted for him. He's just getting a little on the older side. Brandon Ingram, 81 overall. I can't say enough. I'm not the biggest Ingram fan, and I'm not being biased here. I just am wondering, what has he done to warrant an 81, like an above 80 rating in 2K? This guy, I get it. When he's played, he's averaged roughly 16 to 17 points per game, a handful of rebounds and, 1 or 2 assists here and there. I don't think everybody talks about his vision. Oh, he can be this. He can run an offense. He can play point guard in some. I've seen it happen. Yeah, he can, but I don't think he can ever play or run an offense on a winning team. Yeah, he can run an offense. Sure, a lot of players can run an offense, so that doesn't mean they can run a winning offense. Brandon Ingram's not that player. I think he's a little overrated. An 81's fine. He's not going to be too overpowered there. He's just an 81. But you never know. I mean, those are the players that 2K has them at an 81, but you look and then all of a sudden, like, they're open 3-point shots in the 90s and it makes no sense. They're just super overrated. But, I think that should be fine for Ingram. And then Rudy Gay, personally, I think it's a little low for him. He's an 81 overall. He's right there with Ingram. He had a great year last year. I think he could have justified an 82 or an 83 rating, but he's there at 81 to round out the small forward position. Going into the power forward, number 1, of course, we have LeBron's new running mate in Los Angeles, Anthony Davis, at a 94 overall. This guy, great talent. Again, a lot of the players nowadays, you're going to hear this a lot, just have issues staying on the court. When they play, they're amazing. It's just the issue that they're not on there. So Davis, pretty injury prone, but when he does play, a dominant force defensively, and he's learned to be one on the offensive side of the ball as well. A 94 overall is great. Pairs with LeBron James. Great, good to go. And if you notice, he is 1 rating above Paul George. They have to give it to the Lakers because they're the better marketing team. They're the better team to market, the easier team to market. So they make the star duo of LeBron and Anthony Davis just 1 point higher than that of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, the duo that I think is personally better out of the two. Second, at the power forward position, we're seeing a little drop-off, not as quite as big as a small forward and shooting guard, but we're seeing a 6-point drop-off from 94 overall to 88, where Blake Griffin lies. Some people may think that's high. I think it's low. Blake Griffin had an amazing year last year. If you saw him play, he dominated. This guy was somebody who every time he played was a threat to score 30, 40 points a game, contribute at a high level in terms of passing the ball and dishing it out. I mean, this guy, if you're talking about running a winning offense, he can. And at the power forward position of all things, he's a great distributor at his size. He's always been a great rebounder. He boxes out extremely well. He's very athletic. Now the athleticism slowly starting to fade, so I could see why they can justify an 88 overall rating. But at the same time, if you look at last year's season, I think that's a 90 overall season. I personally think so, but obviously 2K didn't. He could end up moving up, but 2K is fairly biased with Blake Griffin. Even in his heyday on the Clippers, when he was a 91, 92, he was never that skilled on the video game. Players don't, if users use him, they'll never really be that impressed. I don't know why 2K has such a hate for him, but they always do. Kristaps Porzingis, 87 overall. Now, some people could say it's not justified. I personally just think he was hurt all year, so there's no way to say it wasn't. But when he does play, he's very versatile. He's a unicorn big, as they like to say, which means that he's over 7 feet, but he can also shoot the 3 ball, handle the ball extremely well, very, very multi-skilled. So he doesn't make a lot of sense because you would think somebody that big wouldn't be that skilled, but he just is. So he's definitely an outlier there. I think he's going to do great things next to Doncic, and I think that both him and Doncic could end up moving up into the high 80s, at the very highest low 90s, but they're definitely candidates to move up. LaMarcus Aldridge took a step back. He's an 87 overall. If you watched him last year, I think that, if you're a smaller market team and you're a star for a smaller market team, just naturally 2K for some reason doesn't respect you as much as they do the superstars in big markets. Because LaMarcus Aldridge is a player that could justify an 88 or an 89. Great offensive player. Under Coach Popovich, since he went from the Portland Trailblazers to the San Antonio Spurs, has gotten much better defensively in terms of just awareness on the court, being there to contest shots in the paint. So I think that he could have justified a higher rating there. Pascal Siakam of the Toronto Raptors is an 87 overall. I love this rating. Do not sleep on Pascal Siakam. He wasn't just a great player in the finals. He was a great player throughout the entire regular season. He doesn't have the flashiest of stats, I'll give you that, but he is a great high-level contributor to a winning team. As you can see, they won the NBA championship. So him returning to the NBA Finals winner in the Toronto Raptors at an 87 is great. Again, a candidate who can move up now that Kawhi Leonard's gone. He's going to have a lot more burden on the offensive side of the ball. With the offensive statistics come a higher 2K rating. That's just how it plays out. Draymond Green, an 86 overall, lowest he's ever been in terms of the Warriors' dynastic run. It's fairly low. I think for as great of a defender and playmaker as he is, he could be justified as higher. Again, a candidate to move up. I just think that 2K is basically foreseeing what a lot of scouts are saying, which is that with a drop of athleticism, even in the slightest form, we're going to see Draymond Green take a huge step back with age. I could definitely see it, although I think that with his passing vision and the ability to contribute via on-ball and off-ball screens, off-ball movement, and his ability to rebound and play a great high-level, elite level of defense, I think that he's still going to be justified to be in a higher 80s role. But some people could think he's a candidate to move down. Tobias Harris at an 85 overall, that's justified. I think that if we were rating Tobias Harris on the Clippers Tobias Harris of last year, he could have been an 87. But Philadelphia Tobias Harris, he wasn't the most impressive, and 85 makes a lot of sense. Don't risk it, 2K. Don't have him at 87 and him super disappoint. Don't have him at an 82 or 83 and just be super disrespectful. 85 makes a lot of sense. Middle tier star. Perfect. John Collins, 84 overall. He's there because of the statistics. Averaged almost 20 and 10 last year. He is a great young player. I'm a big fan of John Collins. Hey, you ain't John Collins. And if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. You kind of had to be there. I'm a big John Collins fan. Watched him in Summer League many times. He's a great, very cool guy, down to earth. I think he's going to have a great season next to Trae Young this year. I think that they have some great shooters around them between Cameron Reddish. I know they had Kevin Huerter from Maryland last year go off. He had a great rookie season. So they have the pieces around him. They don't have a center right now, at least a future centerpiece out there at the 5 position. But at points, John Collins can be that. He can be a small ball 5. He's just as good of a rebounder as anybody else in the league. He lacks kind of that power down there. He's not as strong as some of the elite centers in the league. Like DeMarcus Cousins before all the injuries happened, Joel Embiid. He's not that level of strength, but he's athletic enough and quick enough to where he can still get well-timed rebounds. So he can play some small ball 5, very versatile, and I like the rating at 84. Kyle Kuzma at an 84 overall. It's not that I'm not a Lakers fan. I get it. I don't like the Lakers, but I just personally think that they're overrated, not even liking them, just in terms of how people view them as basketball players. People view Kyle Kuzma as this, high-level elite. Some people honestly do view him as an elite offensive weapon at the 4 position. I just don't see it. I get it. He can shoot the deep ball well when he's hot. He has a lot of cold stretches, though. He's not that versatile when it comes to passing. He's an okay rebounder, but he's not a great one. He's kind of a jack of all trades and a master of none. You could say that he's a master of shooting, but you're only saying that because he's 6'9", 6'10". You're only saying that because he's big. If he were a guard, he'd be just another average shooter. So I'm not the biggest fan of Kuzma. I think he's a little overrated. Now, yes, playing next to LeBron James has helped him. It's giving him more chances to be open, just be basically a spot-up shooter for him. Yet, I don't see a lot of spot-up shooters that are given 84 overalls in 2K. Also, Kyle Kuzma is very heavily involved with the 2K process. He's always visiting the studio. Definitely a personal favorite there for the company, so I could see why they overrate him just a little bit. Personally, I think he's an 80 overall, nothing more, but a lot of people will agree. Julius Randle at an 83. Now, this is one that I like. I think it could even be a little higher. I think that you could justify putting Randle in as an 84. The guy had a great offensive season last year when Anthony Davis got hurt. He really stepped up big for the Pelicans. This guy had a lot of 20, 30, and 10 games. This guy, Randle is a great offensive weapon. The knock on him has always been his defense. He doesn't have the greatest wingspan. He's athletic, but he can't get up to block all those shots like Zion Williamson, his replacement in New Orleans. But this guy's definitely somebody that's fun to watch. I mean, New York's definitely getting an entertaining player in Julius Randle, and I think that because of how good he is on the defensive side of the ball, I would think that 2K would rate him a little bit higher, as in a John Collins 84, Tobias Harris 85 perhaps. But maybe being in New York, being one of the go-to weapons on offense, will ignite 2K to bump up that rating. Now for the last bit, let's go into the 5 position. We got Joel Embiid at 91 overall. I think it's low. Joel Embiid, when he is playing at his highest level, is at least a 93. And don't try to argue with me on that. He's the best center in the game by far. Nikola Jokic is the most versatile center in the game, but he's not the best center in the game. That belongs to Joel Embiid. The guy is not Hakeem Olajuwon, but he's the closest thing we've ever had to him. His footwork's amazing. I get it. He's not always in the greatest of shape. He lives his best life. He's kind of like Shaq in that regard, but the guy's a monster. You can't give him a 91 overall when he was carrying the 76ers throughout the playoffs. This guy is so clutch. At his position with as little time, like he didn't start playing basketball until he was in his late teens. That's amazing. The skill set that he has, that he's developed in such a small amount of time, is nothing short of a miracle. He is such an amazing basketball player, and to only have him at a 91 when offensively, he's definitely a top 3 center. Defensively, he's more than likely the best center in the NBA. How can you justify only rating that a 91 when you're rating Anthony Davis, who if he played the 5 position would be right up there with Embiid, a 94? I think Embiid's at least a 92, should probably be a 93. But you know what, 2K, go ahead and rate him a 91 and then watch him break out again, have another amazing season. I think he could crack 30 points a game. I really do. He's that great of a scorer, and he's going to have to carry that much offense, especially with JJ Redick leaving, as well as Jimmy Butler leaving down to Miami and JJ Redick to New Orleans. I think he's going to shoulder that much more of the offensive burden in Philadelphia, and I think he's going to score a lot more. Plus, they have Al Horford now. This guy's going to take a lot of offensive attention away from Embiid because now they have 2 bigs who can stretch the floor. Yeah, they had that in Tobias Harris, but he wasn't a big. He wasn't the threat that Horford is, because Horford can go in the paint and score a lot better than Tobias Harris can. And so can Embiid. They're both so versatile. I think that Embiid can really crack 30 points per game, and at some point we're going to see him at a 92 or a 93 overall. Second, we have Nikola Jokic at 90 overall. Like I just said, so disrespectful. I get why 2K is the way that they are. It's because the perimeter offense runs the NBA right now. But I want the center position to come back to life in terms of what the media covers. These are some amazing talents. If Jokic played in another era, he'd be just as good. That's how skilled he is. You know, he's not the greatest athlete, I'll give it to you. He's on the bigger side. But man, if I've never seen a better passing big man in the time that I've watched the game. Since the early 2000s to now, he's it. He's that amazing passer. He's the best of the best. He's one of the highest skilled centers to ever touch a basketball. I don't care what you say. Look at the statistics. Look at how he contributes to a high-level winning team. It's not like he's just putting out these stats on a 20-win team, i.e. Devin Booker or a Russell Westbrook, where you're at the 7th or the 8th seed. No, this guy's in a top 3 seed, playing the way he is, carrying his team to the playoffs, almost to the Western Conference Finals. I mean, this guy's amazing. He should at least be a 91 or a 92. I think at some point he was a 92 last year. He's going to rise up to that at some point. Karl-Anthony Towns an 89 overall. Some people might think that's low for him. I'm okay with it. Why? Because I think Karl-Anthony Towns is not as skilled as Jokic, but he's still extremely skilled. He's an elite player, but he hasn't put it all together yet. I get it that he's averaged like 25 points a game, 12 rebounds. I get that. Statistically, he's put it together. But again, Jokic wins, Towns doesn't. That's the difference. And I think that's what justifies them putting him at a sub 90 at an 89 overall. Rudy Gobert, like I said earlier, 2K doesn't respect defensive players. Rudy Gobert should be a 90. At least should be a 90. These guys who have premium skills at a high level position, at a needed position, like these guys contribute a ton to their teams. If you look at it, Embiid, Jokic, Towns, Gobert, Drummond, these guys, their teams would not be the same without them on the roster. And that should equate to something, because it does for the perimeter players, but it doesn't for the big men, and that's just not fair. Rudy Gobert should be a 90 overall. He's the best defensive center in the game, right next to Joel Embiid. I think he's more a little bit, in terms of length, obviously he has that on Embiid. He's a little quicker. He can move faster, mainly because he's lighter. I think you could say they're 1A, 1B as the best defensive centers in the game. I love Rudy Gobert's game, and I think that personally he should be rated higher. But again, just because he's not this great offensive weapon, he's not Karl-Anthony Towns on offense, he's not a 90. But if he added anything to his offensive game, I saw that he was working on his three-point shot over at the World Cup. That'd be interesting to see Rudy Gobert with the three. I think Rudy Gobert with a reliable three-point weapon is one of the most dangerous weapons in the entire NBA. Not only can he block your shot at 7-2, but he can score on you outside of the three-point line on the other end. That's insane. Going into number 5, Andre Drummond at 86 overall. They lowered him a little bit. 2K is typically a big Drummond fan. Anybody who's played the game in the last 5 years, Andre Drummond's probably the best rebounder in it. You put Andre Drummond up against a 7'6" Yao Ming, and for some reason, Drummond comes up with it every time. It's amazing. Yeah, so he's number 5 at 86 overall. I think that's a perfect rating for him. He's not that great of an offensive player. Basically what DeAndre Jordan was in his prime, 86 overall makes a lot of sense. Nikola Vucevic, 86 overall. I think he should be a little higher. The guy took the Magic to the playoffs for the first time in forever last season. I get it. They lost to the Raptors in the first round. I understand that. But still, he had a great series. He's a great scorer. Just as versatile. He's basically Jokic light. Which is, I don't want to categorize him as European big man, but at the same time, out there, they really do hone in on skills at all positions, not just the perimeter positions, and they're both extremely skilled at what they do. I think that Nikola Vucevic is a very underrated passer. I get it, he's not the greatest defender, same as Jokic, and Jokic is definitely more skilled, although Vucevic is skilled, he's, I'd say, a very good player, whereas Jokic is just an elite player. So you could say a very good player is an 86 overall. I just think with the All-Star season he had, bringing the Magic back to the playoffs should definitely mean something. I think you could have seen him at an 87, 88. Personally, I just think the big men are very underrated in 2K. I know a lot of people don't think that, mainly because they just use their guards in their my careers, and all I care about is three-point shooting and, being able to dunk the ball. But big men, they need to have a resurgence. I think that this is a great time for that. There's a lot of great young bigs coming into the league. The issue is that the American young bigs aren't necessarily that skilled. Look at Andre Drummond. The guy rebounds and he puts back lobs. That's basically what he's known for. Whereas a Jokic, coming from overseas, he can pass, he can dribble the ball, he can take the ball up and down the court at the 5 position. These players are just trained and skilled in so many more ways than these American players are, especially at the big man position, and that needs to change because they're talented enough to gain those skills. They're athletic enough to gain those skills. So we have that at 6. Number 7 is Al Horford at 85 overall. I get it. They're equating age into this. Took a step back. 85 overall. I should probably have a fairly good 3-point rating. Still fairly versatile. Don't be afraid to swoop him up. Clint Capella at an 85 overall. 2K seems to have that 85 and 84 set for those lob finishers and rebounders. So if you can finish lobs and you can put back rebounds at a pretty good rate, you'll get an 84 or an 85 in 2K. That's just how the world works there. I don't know how that company comes up with that, but that's just what they do. Jusuf Nurkic is an 83 overall. He was hurt to end the season last year, but when he did play, he's the Bosnian beast for a reason. Great offensive player, not the greatest defensive player. A little slower than these elite level athletes at the 5 position, but still a great overall talent. DeAndre Ayton in an 82. This guy is a sleeper to move up. Extremely skilled. Like we were talking about how overseas players come in. DeAndre Ayton from the Bahamas, played at University of Arizona. He didn't show it last year, but this guy can have some amazing passing instincts. Just athletically, what he's capable of, he can end up being the best center in this game right next to Joel Embiid. He just needs to put it all together, and I think being on a better team, a better overall team in the Suns this year is going to really help, and I think Monty Williams, with the experience he has with Anthony Davis, is really going to push DeAndre Ayton into the best form that he can possibly be. Well, that's the top 10 for each position for the 2K ratings. Just want to go over every single one of them with my input on that. I'd definitely love to hear back from all of you guys and hear what your input is on these new 2K ratings for the 2K20 game. And tell me how you feel about the game. I know it's coming out tomorrow. It launches at midnight tonight. Make sure to download it, buy it if you haven't, pre-order it now if you haven't. You can get some cool extras. And definitely feel free to let us know your responses. As of right now, as you guys know, we're on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, SoundCloud. We're everywhere. So wherever you can think of, Cal's Calls at. Thank you so much for all the support. I really appreciate it. Talk to you guys next time.
For all the latest and breaking news, podcasts, and live streams, make sure to check out Cal's Call on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Periscope.